Hi and welcome, friends. If this is your first time here, my name is Tiffany and I'm the International Witch. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season, and today I'm going to be going over all of the books that I read in December. I'm going to be continuing to use my Leela journals. And before we get started, let's just take a moment to review my rating system just so we're on the same page. For my star rating, a 5-star is an excellent book that I would recommend. A 4-star is a book that I thought would be a 3-star but was pleasantly surprised. Or there was one thing that annoyed me and knocked it down from a 5-star. A 3-star was I didn't like it, I didn't hate it, just meh. A 2-star is I did not like this book and it was a fight to finish. And a 1-star is I DNF'd the book. I did not finish. Now for my spice rating, a 1 chili pepper means that it's closed door. 2 chili peppers means that there's only 1 or 2 sex scenes and it's vanilla. 3 means that there's multiple sex scenes, but it's still very vanilla. 4 is kinks, but it's still about the plot. And then 5 chili peppers, this is all smut, no plot. And as always, my opinions are my own. You are welcome to love a book that I hate or vice versa. That's what makes reading so much fun. Okay, the very first book I read in December is actually one of the worst books I read in all of December, and that is Alexis Hall's Iron and Velvet, a Kate Kane paranormal investigator story. On paper, this should have been a slam dunk story. She's a female private investigator who investigates purely supernatural cases, and she's called upon when a werewolf is found drained of all his blood outside of a vampire's bar. The vampire is not happy that someone is doing this on her territory, and she hires Kate to find out. So I went into this story with really high hopes for a new series to follow. But that's where the praise ends. Like, you start the book immediately getting introduced to 12 characters in the very first chapter alone. By the end of the book, I had a list on paper with a brief description just so I could follow along. Then Kate constantly references her dead partner but never actually says what happens to him in the entire book. Like, she just feels guilty and thinks it's her fault, but we never hear actually how he dies. Also, she was hot. Everyone she met was hot. She wanted to have sex with everyone. Everyone wanted to seduce her. It sounded like a 16-year-old boy was trying to write this character. I rolled my eyes so many times that I seriously debated having an eye roll counter in my book reviews. I am just going to stop here because honestly, I could go on and on and on about all the things that I did not like about this book. So ultimately, I did finish the book. So on a technicality, it gets 2 stars. And it is a 2 chili pepper read. I will not be picking up any more of this series. Now, I'm happy to say that the very next book was absolutely wonderful, and that was Ali Hazelwood's Hot for Slayer. Now, this story was originally part of the Scared Sexy collection, but it has since been released on its own, so it is short because it was part of an anthology, but it was really, really good. Ethel and Laszlo have played cat and mouse for centuries. You see, she's a vampire and he's the trained vampire killer. The story covers them meeting up almost every 10 years to battle it out before going on their separate ways. Ethel always seems to manage to get one over on Laszlo and sneak away into the night. But one day, Ethel is almost killed by another vampire, and guess who saves the day? Laszlo rushes in and protects her, only to have some concrete fall on his head and wind up with amnesia. So now Laszlo is sleeping on her couch, and she's hoping he doesn't kill her the moment he regains his memory. This story was so sweet and fun. It was short, but it was exactly what I was looking for, and I'm so glad that I listened to it on audiobook. If you have Kindle Unlimited, the audiobook is free. The narrators were amazing. I especially loved Laszlo's narrator, Maxim Reston. You could hear how much he adored her through his voice. And Oh, I don't want to give away the ending, but oh my goodness, I melted and I squealed like a little girl. This was my first ever time reading Ali Hazelwood, and I really enjoyed this book. I know she is most famous for The Love Hypothesis, but I haven't read that book yet. And honestly, once a book reaches almost cult status, I'm very hesitant to go into it because the books never live up to everyone else's words. But because this was such a wonderful read, this was an easy way for me to toe into her type of writing. I may actually go and read The Love Hypothesis. I don't know. We'll see. When rating Ali Hazelwood's Hot for Slayer, I gave it 5 stars because this is a great read. I would definitely suggest it, and especially the audio version. And for the spice rating, I rated a spice of 2 because there's only one sex scene and it's pretty vanilla. It's very sweet. The next book I read in December was Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of the books in the Cosmere series, and there are 21 books in the Cosmere series, and I've heard a lot of talk about them, but obviously I didn't want to jump into something that large. So I found out that Tress of the Emerald Sea is part of the Cosmere world, but it's pretty much a standalone. Like, you can read it without having read any of the other books. Tress is a simple teenage girl who lives on an island. No one is allowed to leave the island, but that's okay with Tress. She's happy there with her parents and her collection of cups. But all her contentment vanishes when her young love is taken away to search for a proper bride. Except when the Duke returns, he's bringing home an heir who is absolutely not Charlie. Determined to find Charlie and bring him home safely from the evil sorceress, Tress sets out on a daring adventure. There was so much to love about this story. The world building was amazing. The different seas made of different spores was fascinating to read about, especially when Tress starts learning how to use them. I've never heard any story quite like this. I also love that this was a story based around 2 very ordinary, very dull people who found themselves thrust into unusual circumstances. And I really loved the way Tress's father helped her out. There really was a running theme throughout this book of being kind to others, and that one day when you're in need, they'll return the favor. Now, even though I think this was a wonderful book and I would highly recommend anyone reading it, there were quite a few points that I didn't like. One thing that I never quite warmed up to is the entire story is told through a third person's point of view, Hoyd. And that really kept me from bonding with the main character. I couldn't really get behind her motives or her thoughts, so it kind of felt disconnected. Second, all the crew on the pirate ship are laughably called Dougs, and the author states that they're pretty much interchangeable, so you don't really get deep character development on the pirates. And yet Tress is willing to sacrifice her life and die for people that she really didn't bond with, which was kind of confusing for me. And then at the very end, whenever she battles the sorceress, it's over so fast. And honestly, there's technology introduced that the sorceress is using that kind of yanked me out of the fantasy world. I didn't like that. So this book was really hard for me to rate because part of me thinks it's brilliant and I would absolutely tell anyone to read it. And then another part was like almost about to DNF the book in the middle because it dragged on. So ultimately for my rating, I went with a 3-star because as much as I absolutely loved it, I also equally disliked it and had a hard time getting through the book. Okay, the next book is Emilia and the Eldritch Earl by Vivian Hart. This book was such a disappointment, especially because I've read a few of Vivian Hart's stuff and she's normally pretty good. This is a Regency romance, and I normally avoid Regency romance like the plague because it heavily revolves around the virgin trope. And when I say the virgin trope, I don't mean the lead character is a virgin. I mean it becomes the entire story. I was really hoping that because this is a monster romance that it wouldn't fall into that trap, but it did. But since the entire Regency genre normally revolves like that, I didn't take any stars off for that. No, what I took stars away for was the annoying AF female lead. The amount of times I wanted to DNF this book specifically because of her was too many to count. Every time she did anything, we had to endure an entire page of her lamenting about it. Oh no, I kissed him in the gardens. I'm ruined. You've kidnapped me. I'm ruined. We had sex. I'm ruined. At one point, I literally said out loud, "Are you ruined enough yet? Can we get on with the story?" Now, for my star rating, I did give this book 3 stars, but only because Jack and the Bugbear were absolute sweethearts. The whole side story is the only saving grace for this book. Emilia, however, should go sink in a pond. And there was 3 chili peppers because even though she's ruined, there was multiple sex scenes. Now, the next book is absolutely fascinating. It is not easy to read, but it is absolutely fascinating. And that is The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tey. The title, Daughter of Time, comes from an old quote from Thales of Miletus, and it is, "Truth is the daughter of time," referencing the fact that eventually all things will come to the light. It may not be while you're alive, but all things do eventually come out. If you're familiar with series such as How to Get Away with Murder, where you open up previously unsolved cases and just try to solve it, this was one of the first books to kind of do that on a public scale. Similar to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock and Agatha Christie's Inspector Poirot, Josephine Tey has a protagonist inspector that she follows along through many of her books, and this is just one of the books of Scotland Yard Alan Grant. Now, Alan Grant is confined to a hospital with a broken leg, and he is going crazy. He needs some mental stimulation. So on a whim, one of his friends just brings him a box of random pictures for him to look at just to see faces and to see if he can figure out the story behind them just based on their faces, as a sort of game to keep him occupied. He comes across one picture. The picture is kind of solemn. He looks like a nice guy, but with the weight on his shoulders. And when Alan Grant turns the picture over to try to discover who this person was, he sees that it is Richard III. As an American who grew up in the southern United States, we did not touch on English history very much. We talked about King Henry VIII and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, and the Magna Carta, but other than that, we did not learn about anything else really. So learning about the War of the Roses was something that I did as an adult, but I didn't really dive too deep. And as an adult, the only thing I knew about King Richard III was that he was the person who killed his 2 nephews. And apparently that was the prevailing history. This book, however, opened up a lot of loopholes to that theory. Her theories were so factually sound and had so much evidence that this book launched a reinvestigation of the history of King Richard III. And it was because of her that many groups were created specifically to talk about the topic about whether or not what they learned as children was true. And it's because of her that King Richard III has recently regained his status and was reburied with all the dignity of a royal family person. It was one of the very first times that people could really see that history books were really written by the victors. I did rate Josephine Tey's The Daughter of Time as 4 stars, and the only reason why I took a star off, I know it's not the author's fault, but good golly, was it hard to keep up with all of the different Edwards and different Richards and different Henrys. I would be reading a paragraph thinking it was Henry VII, only to find out that I was actually reading about Henry VIII or King Richard and finding out that it was actually his father, King Richard, or his grandfather. Why do the British monarchs do that? I mean, even now, I feel so bad because when Kate Middleton and Prince William's son George becomes king, he'll be George VII. Can they not come up with new names? It makes history very complicated to follow. Okay, and my next book, or should I say my next series of books, is the Under the Mistletoe collection of Christmas stories. These are all contemporary romances, and I was specifically looking for just something fun that I can listen to in the car because, road rage. And these really fit the bill. And I found out that if you have Kindle Unlimited, if you checked out each of the books separately, you could get the audio for free instead of having to pay for the Audible. So each of these books were technically checked out separately through Kindle, but they are all part of the same collection. Like with all anthologies, these are very short stories. You're not going to get huge character development. These are just meant to be very fun and fluffy. And so that's what I'm going to be grading them on. Up first is Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. Surprise, surprise, found her on my list again. And this story was my favorite out of the entire collection. The yearning, oh my goodness. A man who yearns is just instantly my favorite character. So Jamie is sent next door to her neighbor's house to get a pan for Christmas. And Mac is there holding the fort down for the family while his family is away on vacation. It's an awkward encounter because Mac is the one that got away and Jamie's the one who broke his heart. But with the snow outside forcing them together, they're able to resolve their misunderstanding. Oh, it was so sweet. Next up is Merry Ever After, and I think this one out of all of them is my least favorite. It's about a single mother who goes to a small town to start over when she has a newborn, and she meets a guy, a farmer, who has trouble finding pants that fit him because he's so tall. While I do love the romance, there was just so many points that didn't make sense, especially the fact that her mother is still alive in the city. What young mother with a newborn do you know of would leave their support system to randomly go and start all over in a new town where they don't even have access to a babysitter? So while I love the story, I did not like that part. So I think that is the one that I like the least. Next up, we have All by My Elf. And Nina and William are two underpaid professors who take on a side gig to make ends meet during the winter break. Nina has a crush on William, but thinks he's dating her friend. However, when they're stuck in a snowstorm and have to snuggle for warmth, the truth comes out. In Merriment and Mayhem, Everly just inherited her aunt's house and wants to make a magical holiday there before she has to sell it. Unfortunately, everything she does ends in disaster. Like, call the fire department disaster. Luckily, every time she's saved by the handsome firefighter, Griffin. At first, my knee-jerk reaction was to say that this was a rescue the damsel in distress kind of story. However, after renovating a home myself, I have run into some of the same issues that she has whenever you are taking on a house that you've never been to before. So I actually give her a slide on that one. And the final book is Only Santa's in the Building. Evie is a comic book illustrator who is constantly working through deadlines. Unfortunately, her super sexy neighbor saw her in one of her worst moments. But there's a party coming up, so she's determined to redeem herself. But as soon as she finishes her comic, she finds a handmade ornament on the door. Each day leading up to Christmas, she opens her door to receive a new ornament. Who's behind these sweet gifts? This is my second favorite story right after Cruel Winter. I absolutely love a man who yearns, okay? So I would suggest Cruel Winter with You and Only Santa's in the Building out of the entire series. Under the Mistletoe was just such a sweet collection to just pop in the car when I was driving to the grocery store or back, and all the stories were adorable. They all had a miscommunication of some sort as a running theme, but overall, for enjoyment for these little anthologies, I gave it 5 stars. And each story had one sex scene in it. So each story got 2 chili peppers. So overall, that's 5 stars and 2 chili peppers for the entire Under the Mistletoe collection. Okay, so far all of the books that I've been reading have been playing it pretty safe at the 2 chili pepper mark. But the next 4 books I have are going to be spicier. So if this isn't your thing, you're welcome to skip forward. First up is He Sees You When You're Sleeping by Cass O'Shire and Emily Antoinette. Now, I'm familiar with Cass O'Shire from her Shades of Sanctuary series, but I've never read anything from Emily Antoinette. But I'll admit I saw the main character in a variation of a sleep token mask, so I instantly added this to cart. Ada is suffering from PTSD after a recent mugging. Since then, she's become a shut-in, refusing to step outside even for groceries. Seth is determined to get her back to normal, so he devises a plan to push her into the holiday spirit. He reminds her to put up her Christmas decor and even brings the decorations to her doorstep. Ada has no clue who's doing this, and since she's paranoid and scared, this only makes the situation worse. But when the real evil threatens to hurt Ada, Seth comes to the rescue, even knowing that he'll never be able to return home. This is definitely one of the books where I say check your trigger warnings. There are a lot of triggers in this book. At the very beginning, it was kind of hard for me to get into the story because there were a couple points where I was like, ooh, he's being a bit too mean, a little too rough. That's not my cup of tea. But once I realized who and what he is, it made sense. Like, I can't tell you what's going on without giving away the main twist in the story, but he's actually a cinnamon roll who wants nothing more than to pamper her. So if you have triggers, I would say maybe stay away from this one, but I do think it was excellently written. If you read this book and you really enjoy it, I would also suggest looking into Regine Abel's Mist series, specifically The Mistwalker. The entire time I was reading this book, I was constantly thinking back to The Mistwalker and how they're very similar. I gave He Sees You When You're Sleeping 4 stars out of 5 because, like I said, there were a couple of points at the beginning before I realized what was going on that was kind of hard for me to stomach. Once again, please read your trigger warnings and go into this with your eyes open. And for the spice rating, it is most definitely a 4 chili pepper. I debated about going towards a 5 chili pepper, but it's still very much plot-based, but there was so much kink, which, once again, makes sense once you realize what he is. Okay, the next book is A Very Killer Christmas by Layla Faye, and I have to say, this was the most disappointing book in all of December. And I think the reason why I disliked it so very much is because I came into it with the highest hopes. Last year, I read A Very Stalker Christmas, which I absolutely adored. So I pre-ordered this a year in advance. I waited on this book to come out. And then I didn't read it until December because I was going to read it for the Aurelium Lightfall Challenge. I had this book in my Kindle. I was waiting over a year to read it, and then it was so bad. The premise was great. A killer on the run who hides in a dark house only to discover that it's occupied. I loved the beginning. I loved that Prudence, the female, was a gamer who saw a hot masked man in a biker helmet and was like, yes, please. Like, we could all relate there. But within the first 3 chapters, she admits that she's a virgin, and then the entire book changed. Her love of video games was never mentioned again. She just started acting childish and mopey. And of course, every other thought from Rowley was about her virginal state, about how he needed to be careful because she was so innocent. Blah, blah, blah. The half of the freaking story just became her losing her virginity. And 2 chapters of the book was dedicated to her first time. That is multiple chapters for one sex scene. I should have read the dedication because when I went back and read the beginning, the author literally says that this book is for all the women who wish they could redo their first time. That's all this book is. It's the author trying to relive losing her virginity. It was so cringe. I hated it so much. I gave it 2 stars, but only because I finished it. If this was a physical book, I would have yeeted that book so fast, but it was on my Kindle, so I don't want to throw my Kindle, but I hated this book. The next book I read in December was Triple Tidings, a Why Choose Holiday Romance by Cleo White. Lacey runs a family bed and breakfast. On the weekend of Christmas, all of her bookings cancel but 2. And of course, those 2 are both her previous one-night stands. How will she navigate the awkwardness? Wells and August both show up separately, intending to use this time to woo Lacey, until they run into each other. Come to find out, Wells and August used to date. They decide to join forces. This book was advertised as a Why Choose romance, but honestly, it was way more of an age gap romance. Like, I felt zero romance between the two men and Lacey. It just seemed to be lust with them. I felt no emotional attachment. But now, the romance between Wells and August was really sweet and very thought out. I was rooting for them. I just felt like the only thing they liked about Lacey was she was young. And I really hated how the story framed men dating women their daughter's age as the best option. It was just a little bit too much ick for my liking. So ultimately, I decided to give Triple Tidings 3 stars. And for the chili pepper rating, there was as much kink as they could possibly put into one book. So that was 4 chili peppers out of 5. The next book I read in December was Frost by Low Gold, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now, this was by far the darkest book I read in all of December. It is a Krampus story, so normally those do tend to be on the darker spectrum, but I feel like the author used trigger lists as almost like a checklist. Eliza is an orphan and feeling really lonely this Christmas, so she takes an opportunity to travel abroad to stay with a host family in Norway in a student exchange program. On the airplane, she's drugged, kidnapped, and sold. Jack Frost guards the woods. He has been punishing a lot of people this year. Every time he turns around, he's sensing the dead bodies of beautiful women. It seems like this exchange program is nothing more than a trafficking scheme. Then, Jack Frost sees their most recent victim, his mate. This is definitely one of those books that if you have any triggers whatsoever, do not attempt to read this book. This book was very hard to stomach. It was very explicit on the sexual assault scenes. There's multiple attempted graping. I don't know if that'll be banned on YouTube, so I'm going to say it that way. This is dark, very dark, and I almost think it was the shock value that the author was going for. I gave this book 3 stars only because I did get wrapped up in it, but ooh, this was dark. And I gave it 4 chili peppers because there was a lot of story, but there was also a lot of sex scenes and a lot of kink. The main female character is, of course, a virgin. He has 2 penises and forces her to take them both on her first time. Like, it's a ridiculous amount. So this is literally if you want a shock value book. Oh, okay, now we're taking a break from the super dark stuff and we're going to go back to our more light, fluffy reads. The next book I have in December is The Gingerbread Bakery, and that's by Lori Gilmore. This was such a sweet story. Oh my goodness. Annie and Mac have a long history. Through school, Annie was the overachiever who knew exactly what she wanted in life. Mac was the opposite. He was a popular boy who had no clue what he wanted, but had a thirst to hit the road and travel to find himself. A chance encounter at a Christmas market makes them see each other in a new light. But when Mac leaves to do his year of travel, he promises to come back and eat together at the diner, but Mac doesn't show, and Annie is left heartbroken. When he moves back to town 8 years later, Annie vows to hate him, holding all her anger tight to her chest. Mac knows that Annie has always been the one for him, and now they're in a forced proximity for their friend's wedding. This is Mac's chance to prove to Annie that he's worth a second chance. This book was advertised as an enemies to lovers trope, but honestly, this is way more of a second chance romance, and it was so sweet, especially whenever you get all the backstory behind it. There was only one gripe I had with this book. I think it's book 5 or 6 in the series, and it specifically said in the description that it could be read as a standalone. However, there were so many side characters that I was trying to keep track of that you should already know from previous books. So that made it a little bit difficult to follow, just like a little bit, but I did really enjoy this book. I gave The Gingerbread Bakery 4 stars out of 5, and for its chili pepper rating, it got 2 chili peppers. The next book is Under Loch and Key by Lana Ferguson. After Kiana's father passes away, she flies to Ireland to his hometown to fulfill his dying wish. Unfortunately, before she can spread her father's ashes, she slips and almost falls in. She's caught by the handsome but rude Lachlan. Lachlan has a family secret, and he doesn't want anything to do with the prophesied daughter of Mackay. But he can't help his heart from feeling protective at the bonny lass, especially when he witnesses her long-lost granny's disdain for her. While I really enjoyed this book, I thought it was cool and so sweet, especially the stories of the Kelpie and the Loch Ness Monster. But there were a couple of things that kind of irked me, and one of those is the relationship between Key and her granny is over way too soon. Like, I think it should have been a stronger argument or a bigger fight. It's just the woman is awful through the whole book, and then just 2 paragraphs and everything is hunky-dory. And in the middle of the book, it got really slow. Like, the pacing was super slow and could have been edited down. However, I listened to this book on Spotify. It's one of the free stories if you are a Spotify user. The narrator, the female narrator, was amazing. She actually brought tears to my eyes. So if I had read this book in print format, I probably would not have liked it, but I think it was the narrators that brought this story to life for me. So if you're going to look into this book, I would highly suggest looking into an audiobook version of it. I rated Under Loch and Key 4 stars. I only took a star off because it really did drag a lot in the middle. And it gets 2 chili peppers. The next book that I read in December was Destined to the Lycan by Regine Abel. It's part of Regine Abel's Shadow Realms collection. Out of all of her books, I definitely think that the Prime Mating Agency collection and the Shadow Realms collection are 2 of her best. The Prime Mating Agency collection is more of a lighthearted, fun series of books, and the Shadow Realms is a little bit more darker and more of an adventure based series. I absolutely adore them. Amara is terminally ill, and no matter who she visits, no one can help her. Desperate, she visits the Weaver. The mysterious witch tells her to seek out the cursed demon wolf and get his bite. The only person crazy enough to guide her up the mountain is Remus, a Lycan with that same demon wolf's curse running through his own veins. Remus instantly recognizes Amara as his twin flame, and although he doesn't want Amara anywhere near the cursed wolf, he can smell the death on Amara, and he knows that the Weaver is never wrong. The first time I read the first book in the series, I was so surprised at how the Weaver twists words. But now, after this being the 3rd book, I'm expecting it, and I'm reading extra careful, and yet she still managed to get me. I always love the twists and turns that Regine Abel manages to put in these books, even when you're expecting it. I gave this book 4 stars. Because I know that people have been complaining about the fated mates and using the word mate in series. So obviously Regine Abel caved, and instead of saying mates, she's saying twin flames, which I think is even more ridiculous. Like, I can't get behind the words twin flames. That's such a Gen Z thing, I think. And I just couldn't take it seriously, so I took a star off. And for the chili pepper rating, I gave it 2 chili peppers because in this book there is only 1 sex scene, which is very light compared to the other 2 books in the series. However, knowing that Remus is almost diseased, like his blood is cursed and he can't have sex with the female, or at least he thinks he can't. Like, it's hard to explain, but it makes sense that there's only 1 sex scene in this book. So if you're looking for something extra spicy, then this isn't the one out of the series. Maybe start with book 1. It has a lot more spice than this one, but I thoroughly enjoyed the story and how it was much more plot focused. The next book on my list is Smitten by the Alien Saloon Owner by Ursa Dax. Now, Ursa Dax's Cowboy Colony series has just become one of my pre-order immediate series. I love every single one of them. They're just such a feel-good story with sweet, handsome, and absolutely devoted men. Shiloh is tired of her life. She's a factory worker who suffers from frequent migraines. Same girl, same. She dreams of an easier life where she can paint and sleep when she has a migraine episode. She sees a calendar of hot alien men who are in need of brides. She's not really looking for a husband, but she's willing to try it if it means escape from her job. Riven is the saloon owner who lost his hand at a very young age. When he sees Shiloh, he knows he'll do anything it takes to show her that he can be the best husband she could want. I think Shiloh and Riven were such a cute pair because they both had issues and were able to understand and sympathize with each other. I gave Smitten by the alien saloon owner 5 stars because it was just perfect, no problems whatsoever, and it has 2 chili peppers for the spice rating. Okay, the next story is another Krampus dark romance. This one is Punished by Krampus by Skyla Grey. And I have to say, this is by far my all-time favorite Krampus story now. Diana thinks she finally snagged the key to a good life, a rich fiancé from a long-established family. This is the first time meeting his family. When she arrives, Diana realizes that the family cabin in the woods is actually a bunker-like fortress. When the future in-laws tell her that Krampus is coming, Diana thinks they're just joking. But when they drag her out of the house and lock the door behind her, she comes face to face with the legend. Pissed that she's been thrown to the monster while her fiancé sips wine behind closed metal windows, Diana makes a deal with Krampus. She'll accept her punishment, but after she helps Krampus take them all down one by one. This is by far one of the best Krampus stories I've read. The premise of it is like a dark game, and I love that the female main character flips it on their heads and she becomes the hunter. Now, it is dark like all Krampus stories are. The romance is very dark and there's a lot of kink, but just the thought behind the story, it was wonderful. And only 144 pages. It's a quick read. I gave Punished by Krampus 5 stars because it was excellent. And the spice rating is 4 chili peppers because there was a lot of kink in the story. The next and final story is Bad Santas by D. Garcia. Now, I'm going to be honest, this was a knee-jerk purchase for me. I saw the cover and I thought the cover was so cool and gorgeous, and it was at the very last day of December, so I was just wanting something quick and fun, nothing too heavy. But this book is pretty much all smut, no plot. It is very, very short. The cover said it was a novella, but honestly, it's way too short for me to even consider it a novella. I think it would have been better released in a whole anthology. I have since discovered that she does have a book for different holidays, and I think this one would have done better if it was grouped with the other books. It's only 53 pages. Noelle is at a Christmas party for work when her colleague tells her about the super hot Santa. Noelle thinks there's no way a Santa can be hot. But soon, Noelle eats her own words when she gets her first glimpse of Nick. She's in a long line of women waiting to sit on Santa's lap and tell him what naughty things they want for Christmas. When it's Noelle's turn, she wishes for 3 masked men. Once Noelle gets home, she thinks that it's all fun and games, until she's awoken to 3 masked men in her living room. Nick has come to make her Christmas wishes come true, and he's brought his 2 sons to help. I gave this book 4 stars because although there's nothing wrong with an erotic short story, I don't think this was long enough to be a novella. And it is 5 chili peppers because it is all smut and no plot. And here's when I realized that I smeared ink on the page and have to do my customary gesso. I remembered that I forgot to add tabs to November and December, so I'm just going to go ahead and do those real quick while I'm thinking about it. Okay, now I'm going to add all of my book covers to my books completed spread. Now comes the fun part, which is seeing how I stacked up against all of my reading challenges. During December, I did 2 different challenges. One was the Sails and Tales challenge by MandaMade, and the other one was Lightfall from Book Roast. And I specifically choose very short books during this month so I can hit those goals. Okay, sorry about the audio here, but I am going to try to do this live in real time because this is very tricky to voice over when you're doing specific things. So I have the Sails and Tales, and let's see if I got a bingo. I have already pre-printed all the books and their corresponding prompt. So let's see what I got. So first up we have Hurricane. Continue a series that you've been swept up into. And that would be Smitten by the Alien Saloon Owner by Ursidex for Hurricane. Okay, and so let me go ahead and put my little check mark there. These are going to be a nightmare to get the backs off of. I can already tell. I probably should have gotten some tweezers. Do I have a pair over here? Ah, yes I do. Okay. Having nails does not help with this. Here we go. Okay. So check 1 for Hurricane. Okay. Drunken Dance. Take a chance on a new genre. Okay. That would be Emilia and the Eldritch Earl by Vivian Hart. I probably should just print these on regular paper and use like a glue stick to put them down, but I find that the sticker paper, like the pre-adhesive sticker paper, takes up less space, so it doesn't make my journal as bulky. Okay. Okay. Next up we have Ship, and that is the cover contains the colors of your country's flag. I live in the US, so that's red, white, and blue, which is Hot for Slayer by Allie Hazelwood. Okay, Compass, book with the north, south, east, and west. I did not do that one. So I already can tell I will not have a bingo here. But I do have Waves, and that is water on the cover, which is Under Loch and Key by Lana Ferguson. Okay, next is Hat, a book with a pretty cover. I did not do that one. The next one is Anthem, read from a genre you are loyal to. And of course, that would be monster or fantasy romance. I am sorry for the dog. Unfortunately, I live in Naples, and we have quite a few dogs around here, and the owners cannot keep them from barking. They bark all day and night. All right, next, Map, a book that contains a map. This was actually a surprise. The Gingerbread Bakery had a map, so that fulfilled that prompt. Okay, next is Gold. Gold foil on the cover. And that would be The Daughter of Time. Okay, and the next is Grotto, which is a special edition book. I do not have that because I don't purchase special editions. So the next is Pirate Study. Contains a morally gray character. And that would be A Very Killer Christmas by Layla Faye. Okay, Sun and Stars, a book with a sun or stars on the cover. I did not complete that one. And then we have our free space. And Island is a book with an isolated setting. And that was Punished by Krampus by Skyla Gray. So far, still don't have a bingo. We're not done yet. No, I have to get it up, not push it down. Well, it is what it is. I'm sorry, my perfectionism hates that, but it'll have to be what it is. Okay, Captain's Study. Read a story on leadership. Of course I didn't do that. Next, Hook. An impulse buy. Oh yeah. That was Bad Santas by D. Garcia. I heard the title and saw the front and I was like, absolutely. So the cover and the title got me on this. Tale. Finished the final book in a series. I am not reading any series right now, so I do not have that. Wind. Title contains a word with a sound. I do not have that. Pearl. A book with a white cover. That would be Triple Tidings by Cleo White. Black Sails, a book with a black and white cover. I did not get. Siren Song, Lured by Another's 5 stars, and that would be Under the Mistletoe. And I read this because I saw it on Erin Smith's book review pages. She didn't give it a 5 stars, but considering I don't really listen to other people's recommendations, just the fact that it was a recommendation counts for me. I'm on my last row and I still don't have a bingo yet. I'm hoping I will get this. Pretty sure I do. Okay, gems. Gemstone on the cover. In the title or on the cover, sorry. That would be Tress of the Emerald Sea, because emerald is a gem. Please excuse the rattling behind me. My dog has decided that this is a great time to eat her food. Okay, the next one is Port. Read a recent purchase, and that would be Frost by Low Gold. This one just came out this month. I actually had it on reserve, so I knew the moment it came available. Okay, and the next is Mermaid Study. Contains a non-human character, which was super easy for me. This is Destined to the Lycan by Regine Abel. Okay, and the last one, we still have not got a bingo yet, but I think I'm going to get 2. So the last one is Treasure, with metal word in the title, and that would be Iron and Velvet. put it right here. It looks like the octopus is holding it. Okay, and that is 2 bingos. So I have Hurricane Anthem, The Free Space, Pearl, and Treasure. And then I have Siren Song, Gems, Port, Mermaid Study, and Treasure. So I got 2 bingos. Let's go over here and see who I am. So I became a pirate. Okay, and now over to Lightfall to do the same to see if I got a bingo here. Luckily, this one I can do with an overvoice just because a lot of these things are not book related and I was pretty good at keeping up with the dates I completed these. I'll just discuss the prompts while I do all the check marks in the background. For the prompt blue, I read Smitten with the Saloon owner. For a 4-star rating, I read Under Loch and Key. For 300 to 400 pages, I read Destined to the Lycan. For a cozy, I read The Gingerbread Bakery. For a white book, I read Triple Tidings. For a new release, I read Frost by Low Gold. For a winter setting, I read A Very Killer Christmas. And for a standalone book, I read He Sees You When You're Sleeping. And when all was said and done, I had 5 bingos. And each time you get a bingo, you get to pick out a treat from Dovantia's flower arrangements. So my 5 treats that I picked out were the Lightfall Delight, the Cat Loaf, Cinnamon Bun, Slippy Cup, and Nose Crime. After this, I had planned on setting up my 2026 reading journal with you, but unfortunately, I only have 30 pages left in this journal, and I have at least 20 pages to go into my new journal for challenges and just general setup. So I'm going to make a separate video for that. I have a new journal coming, but they keep changing the delivery date, so now it's going on 3 weeks, but hopefully here soon you'll be able to see it. For this video, this is just going to be the final walkthrough and I'm going to end it here. I hope you had fun, and if there was any books that you are now interested in, if you'll just leave me a comment below. If you made it this far in the video, leave me your favorite holiday emoji in the comments below. Did you do any of the challenges? I'd be interested to hear if you got any bingos this year. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe so you see more like it, and hit that thumbs up so that YouTube knows that this is a good video and that it should show more people. Love you. Bye.